Well, let's move along. We've got a lot of stuff to do tonight, and the next person that we are going to be bringing to the podium is a gentleman by the name of Edwin Berry. He's from Big Fork, Montana. Ed is an atmospheric physicist with a PhD. He will share from a scientific perspective the truth about climate change and how and why it is used politically. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Edwin Berry. Microphone's right there.
Okay, thank you. We scientists, and I'll call them we because there's thousands of scientists on my side of this issue, namely global warming is a fraud. We've known it for years. We've had, however, just to make the scientific argument, and there are many of us that are out there doing so. I'm only one of many that will tell you the same thing. But making a scientific argument is always that little bit hard because it's hard for everybody to understand a whole scientific argument. But I'm going to show you some of that because you've got to go away with some of it. But then, as probably all of you know at this point, almost a miracle happened. Several months ago, whistleblowers, we'll call them in England, who had worked for apparently the Climate Research Unit, had seen all the fraud going on the inside of where they do the temperature data and the models and take care of the stuff, essentially where they create the whole promotion of global warming in there. This is one of the main centers. He knew it was a fraud. We'll go into some details. Put all this stuff together. He put it in a big zip file. He shipped it out. He first sent it to the media. He thought they would pick it up. The media ignored it. BBC had this information probably a month before any of the rest of us even knew it. Then he was discouraged. Maybe a she, we don't know yet, but said, okay, found some sites over in Russia, some servers to put this on, and pretty soon it popped out. And at this point, it's been unraveled. We've got emails from this Hadley Research Center with our NOAA, our NASA, National Center for Atmospheric Research. It goes through all of our laboratories. Essentially, it's a whole conspiracy of, I'll call them very unethical scientists who have promoted this from the inside. And then there's the computer programs as well. Gobs of it, I don't know how many pages. But within that, there happens to be 1,100, apparently, this is unbelievable, 1,100 pages of notes by the programmers who were hired to work on it. This is how it works. The scientists were the people, they had these climate models, and originally they went back 20 years, and they're done in Fortran language and all this. And the scientists, in general, unless they've really studied programming, they're not very good programmers, okay? They know how to put together, and the Fortran language looks kind of like equations that you're used to in physics. So you put it together. Well, as things get, you start taking and if any of you are into programming, and probably you are because of this size audience, if you start with something that's a little bit schlocky and you try to build it a little bit bigger, and then money comes in and you have to move fast, you do something else, and then there's a political pressure, you've got to achieve a certain goal. In other words, you better generate some real answers that the funders want. You're under some pressure. Then you hire some programmers, probably very good programmers. But they can't start all over at this point, right? They have to go try to do the patching. And so there's this story of one guy, I think we call him Harry at this point, who's made a lot of notes. And we see him, he spent 3 years, I guess he quit. He goes through and he outlines what's in there. He makes little notes in the program that we now know about. And little things like, well, he says, today we had to go put out this whole model projection because it had to go to the IPCC. And it goes out and is quoting like they're accurate to 1/10 of a degree. And he says, internally, he says, there's this subroutine that I've tested, and it's not even accurate to 1 degree. And so if anybody knows that, you can't go through a crunching subroutine that's only plus or minus 1 degree and be talking about 1/10 of a degree coming out. That's just the beginning of it. It goes on and on and on. Another one that's really great. They haven't advanced to the point of using a good relational data system like anybody would do. You know, Oracle makes it, Microsoft makes it, other people make it, where you can organize your data to work with it properly and make sure you get it processed. You know, to bring the data in and do it right, keep track of your data. No, they have it in text files. I mean, this goes back decades in computer programming. Text files. Harry said, I've got 11,000 text files. I don't even know what to do with them. There's no instructions as to what to do with them. And this is, the whole thing is coming unglued inside here. Now we see what's going on inside these computer models. He says, in fact, here's some text files. They have the same name, and there's different stuff inside them. And it gets worse and worse the further you go. It becomes very much of a joke. I'm going to mention, let's start this thing with what Obama said. As we probably know, climate change is real. Not only is it real, it's here. Its effects are giving rise to frightening global warming phenomenon, a man-made natural disaster. Okay, is Mr. Obama going to take that back right now? Is he going to not go to Copenhagen and sign this treaty because this whole fraud's been blown apart? No, he'll probably go there. He'll probably sign it if there's something to sign. And he'll probably come back, and because he won't be able to get it through the Senate, his plan is to go to our Supreme Court. And because they're kind of all handpicked at this point, get them to essentially say this qualifies as an international treaty, so he doesn't have to have the Senate approve it. And this is what Lord Monckton has been talking about. If you haven't heard of Lord Monckton, please look him up on the internet site. This guy has revealed the most useful information that we have. A fellow from England. He was Margaret Thatcher's science advisor way back. So he has looked at this Copenhagen Treaty. He has said, warning to America, he says, you are the last free nation on earth. He says, we're not free anymore in England. He says, you have got to preserve your freedom. And how do you do it? You essentially must stop this Copenhagen Treaty from becoming a reality. Because if it becomes a reality, you don't have a constitution anymore. All these things you think you're fighting for on the basis of your constitution will disappear overnight if this Copenhagen Treaty gets totally accepted in the United States. And it may take the Supreme Court to do it. But that's the danger. We're right on the danger. He says we're in the last second of the last 24 hours, everything of things that can happen here, and we've got to stop it. So he says we will lose our sovereignty. That treaty, when Obama signs it, if he gets his intentions, it puts us under the one world government with no more constitutional rights. Now, can you believe anyone representing the people of the United States would do that to us? It cannot happen. But here he is. The United Nations, we know about it. There's this intergovernmental panel, the IPCC. It's a political organization posing as a scientific institution. It's not science. It never was science. Its whole goal was to essentially prove that humans cause global warming. That's pseudoscience. If it were science, you would take a picture and say, what is causing climate change, if anything? And you would allow nature to be part of what you question. Well, in the case of the IPCC, they don't even allow nature in. So when they look at a certain change, that in fact they manufacture, because I'll show you that, they manufacture a certain temperature record, and they say, how do we show what's happening? They said, well, we're not going to allow it to be the sun. We're not going to allow it to be ocean currents. We're not going to allow it to be volcanoes or things of nature. Nope, we're going to assume it's all human stuff. So when they go in with that assumption, and they essentially take these models, which are curve fits, they're not really models that are predictive. Turn enough knobs, essentially fudge factors in the models, and you can fit it. You can say, aha, it fit, therefore humans caused all this global warming. Well, have they? Here's what happens. In the IPCC, you've seen these summary reports. When you and me, and we probably all got these letters. We write a letter to our senator and we say, hey, I don't like this global warming stuff. We get a letter back saying, you don't know what you're talking about because global warming is the real truth, and we take these words that come right out of the summary report of the IPCC, and they say, this is the absolute truth that comes out of the IPCC. We can't question them. Well, hey, the scientists that input the information, it goes through this group that massages the information, picks out what they want, change it, put out our summary report before they ever get the scientific report.